Joining me now is House Speaker Emerita Nancy Pelosi. Speaker Pelosi, we're going to talk about Joe Biden. You know him so well. He's the nominee of the Democratic Party, and there's a lot to talk about. But I do want to start with something I don't think has received enough attention, which is Donald Trump and his performance in that debate. Because there were some alarming things he said during that debate. As you were watching, what stuck out to you as the moment where you wish it would be blasted everywhere and people would watch it and understand the threat he poses?
Well, how are you? Good to see you.
Great to see you.
There's stiff competition for that moment. There's stiff competition for that moment because it was a constant manifesto, again, of lies. As you may recall, I tore up his speech at the State of the Union because it was a total manifesto of lies, and that's what we saw the other night, which must be rejected, as well as his candidacy. Of course, one that stood out was about January 6th. This man would not send the National Guard. The Republicans know that because some of them were in there when we were asking for it, begging for it, to the Secretary of the Army, the Secretary of Defense, and the president, of course, is the ultimate commander-in-chief, and he would not send it. So for him to go on TV and lie about that, the instigator of an insurrection against the Congress of the United States, against the Constitution of the United States, against the Capitol of the United States, and just pass it off. So that was tough. But in terms of what it means at the kitchen table for America's working families, for him to talk about Roe v. Wade the way he did, either he doesn't know what he's talking about or he's totally lying, or both. So it's a terrible combination. So when people look at that, okay, it was not a good night. Let's face that in terms of performance for Joe Biden. He's so much better than that. But what it means to people in their lives, he answered questions about policy. How can you have a legitimate debate when somebody is totally lying and you have to completely dispel their falsehoods? But in any case, three things I would say. A woman's right to choose, he lied about that. This is very important to women. It's a freedom issue. It's an economic issue. It's a kitchen table issue. It's a personal issue. In terms of jobs, Joe Biden, 15 million new jobs. The other guy, the worst job performance since Herbert Hoover. And he's saying, oh, he did this and he did that. In terms of COVID, it was terrible. His denial and his delay on COVID killed people. What he did on January 6th, people died or were hurt. This is a dangerous person and evil. And then I would say on the economy, which is so important, I talked about the jobs, 16 Nobel laureates, 16 economic Nobel laureates said the other guy's fiscal policies will have inflation go up. So again, it is, I mean, if you talk about climate, and he sat with the fossil fuel industry and said, give me $1 billion for my campaign so I can reverse what they've done to save the planet. So everything that matters to people, whether it's gun violence, protection, you name it, this person has been on the negative end of it all. And everybody's talking about what Joe Biden did. Thank you for asking about him, because it was terrible. And our members, the one thing I would say about them the day after, Friday morning when we went in for votes, is it was stunning to see the Republicans embrace this pack of lies. Once again, they know that that isn't true, what he was saying, or else they're just in a state of disillusionment. But in fact, people have to make the vote for themselves. And what they saw between the two of them did not change many minds, as Molly was saying earlier, because people are smarter than that. But on the other hand, why do we talk all about Joe Biden? This guy's old. He doesn't have a stream of thought that is logical. And nobody says anything about that he could be so disassociated from the facts. You saw on one side of the screen integrity, concern for people. On the other side, you saw dishonesty and self-serving lies.
No question, and we have definitely been talking about it. And I think the reason it's important to talk about President Biden is for people to understand what the options are here, right? And the different choices people are throwing out there. I'm sure you've gotten a million calls from people. You've probably been talking to donors and members and everybody out there in the Democratic Party. There was a report I wanted to ask you about because anonymous sources, I'm always a little skeptical of. There's a couple of anonymous sources saying in an NBC story that you told members you were concerned about Joe Biden's viability, not his talent as a president and all of his accomplishments, but his viability as a candidate. And you're not an anonymous source. You're the person. So I want to ask you if that's true.
We have informed NBC that that was not true. It couldn't be further from the truth. If anything, I'm being criticized for being so clear about Joe Biden and his decision about running for office. So that completely was not true. I don't know where they got that, but I've had a problem with NBC News and thereby some of their things they put forth. That's why you don't see me on Meet the Press or any of those shows. But the fact is, no, I never said that. And I don't know that the other people they claim said that. We have to win the election. We always subject how we go forward in terms of our mobilization at the grassroots level. And let me tell you, I've been in California, North and South. People are there for Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. They are there for them. They know that this is challenging. No, it's difficult. It always is. Elections are tough. They're not easy things. They're tough. And you have to own the ground to get out your vote. You have to have a message of what difference it makes in people's lives. The kitchen table issues of personal freedom and job opportunity and education and climate and the rest, guns, violence protection and the rest, and what it means to people. And you have to have the money to get it done. And Joe Biden has, he raised $14 million after that poor performance in the debate. But let me just say this. One of the things that did happen is people have said to me, we're going to give so much more money now to you for the House Democrats because watching, I hate to use his name, what's his name, lie so much on TV, we know we must win the House, as at the same time we elect the president and we elect a Democratic Senate. So let's be calm. Let's be prayerful. It's a Sunday morning. Let's be clear in terms of evaluating what the possibilities are and the rest. But let us recognize that Joe Biden has been a great president of the United States and what he is putting forth for the future. It's not about the past. Nobody votes for you because you deserve it. They want to know what you're going to do next. And what he has next to do is to continue his agenda for the people, putting people over politics. And that means more for women in the workplace, family and medical leave, child tax credit, affordable child care, so that many more women can participate in all of the bills that he passed, whether it's to protect our veterans. Imagine that this guy was trying to lay claim to doing more for veterans. We did hundreds of billions of dollars to help veterans who are victims of burn pits. And then denying that he said what he said about the veterans. Just think of what he said about John McCain, a national hero, a prisoner of war. Just such a super patriot, and this guy was downgrading him because he was captured. There's something wrong there, and there's something doubly wrong by the Republicans who wrap their arms around that.
So I have one more question for you. We've been talking on this show just about all the different paths, just to help people understand. Congressman Jim Clyburn said, quote, recently, I'm a Biden-Harris person, so I'm not getting away from that. I'm for Biden-Harris. I'm going to be for Biden if Harris ain't there. And I'm going to be for Harris if Biden ain't there. I just want to be very clear here. There's no indication Joe Biden is not going to be the nominee. But are you in the same place as Clyburn, your colleague?
Well, I'm in my own place, and that place is I support the Biden-Harris ticket. I think they've a very successful presidency and vice presidency and have more to get done. And hopefully if we can get rid of the filibuster and pass bills with 51 votes instead of 60, we can accomplish much more as we go forward.
Does that mean, though, that you'd support Harris if Biden wasn't on the ticket? You'd support Harris?
You know what? Biden is going to be. I'm saying to you that I support the Biden-Harris ticket. I'm not abandoning Joe Biden right now for any speculation. Biden, Harris, both of them. I'm enthusiastically supporting them, as are many of our grassroots people. So while the intelligentsia may have some analysis of what people are thinking, what we're hearing that people are thinking is they support the ticket, and I support the ticket.
Voters are most important. Let me ask you about the Supreme Court.
Okay.
I wanted to just ask you about the Supreme Court, because there is a very important ruling that's coming down tomorrow morning regarding presidential immunity. They've waited for 6 months. They've delayed, making it so that the American public will not see a hearing, will not see a verdict on its very important case. What is your reaction to all of this? What are you watching for? What should people understand about the delay and what we're looking ahead to tomorrow?
Well, thank you for that question. If the court tomorrow says that the former president is above the law, they will have done a grave disservice to justice in our country. Let us hope that they have show us some allegiance to their oath of office to support and defend the Constitution of the United States. And that just because you're president doesn't mean you're immune from prosecution if you break the law. So that will be a big test for the court tomorrow to see if they honor their oath of office.
They've given us a lot to doubt them lately.
By delaying as they have undermined justice in our country, in my view.
No question. Could not agree with you more.
And by the way, let's just go back to January 6th. Let's go back to January 6th, because this is one of the charges against the president. The president goes on TV and says, I planned my own assassination. No, I didn't. He did. They're going to hang the vice president of the United States, and they're going to put a bullet in my F-word head. And he will not send the National Guard. People were injured, over 100 law enforcement people were injured. Some people died because of him. And people died again because of his delay and denial about COVID. This is a totally irresponsible person. And again, this Supreme Court would say that a person is above the law, and they've waited months to come to a conclusion about it. It's going to be a very important day for America.